Welcome back to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. We have a special guest coming up on the line, but first, here's Ken.
Hey, thanks, Jack. Good afternoon, everyone listening to CaMMVets Media here on WVOX in Rochelle on a beautiful February President's Day. And CaMMVets Media, we cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans. So we have one of our longest-standing guests on the line today, 31-year veteran of the U.S. Navy and a VMI graduate, and now works for CABHAM Government Relations as Senior Vice President down in the Washington area. And that is our friend Rear Admiral Terrence McKnight. Admiral, how are you today?
Good, Ken. How are you today on this President's Day holiday?
Absolutely. Good. It's a beautiful day up here in the New York area. Glad to have a chance to chat. We appreciate it. And I also want to mention you're the author of one of our favorite books, Pirate Alley, about your efforts to lead a U.S. Navy Task Force 151 off of Somalia. Hey, tell us a little bit, how has the fight against the Somali pirates gone on? You don't hear about it as much. Is it as much of an issue as it was about 15 years ago when you were in the Navy?
No, it's died down a lot, Ken, and a lot has to do with what the merchants and the navies and it was a great joint operation from a lot of things that basically brought it down to a halt. But when I lecture on it still to today, I always tell people that as long as ships go to sea, there'll be pirates. So it's just not as robust as it was back in 2007 through probably 2013. So it's died significantly.
Well, so much to talk to you about it. What's your thought on the story that the Chinese flew a military observation balloon across the United States, no advance notice to the United States on that? And what was your thinking on what happened and how the administration handled that?
Well, it's a good thing. I've read up on it, several, articles, from the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, everything. And, it was interesting that I read one the other day. It says we actually detected the launch of the balloon, and it, flew over, Guam and all that kind of thing. And there's a lot of thought that the balloon actually got caught up in the Gulf Stream, and not the Gulf Stream, but got caught up in the jet stream and flew over the United States. And probably the Chinese did not want it over the United States. But once it got there, then all of a sudden it starts maneuvering over some strategic places. So we actually detected it and followed it. My personal opinion, I think we should have shot it down as soon as it started. We detected it because we kind of knew what they were doing. We waited till it got over the Atlantic Ocean, maybe so it won't fall on any civilians. But you talk to people that I know that live in Montana, and in the middle of winter, there's not a lot of people standing outside looking at balloons. So my guess, if we would have put a notice out on the radio stations, the TV stations, people would have stayed inside, and it would have had little impact on any damage to anybody. But interesting event, and as the Secretary of State's been traveling and saying, things about we're basically in a Cold War with China, and that's exactly right. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the Middle East and really didn't concentrate on what happened, in the Pacific. And if you go back and look at what happened 100 years ago, it's almost a rewind of what happened with the Japanese trying to obtain islands, obtain resources, and all that kind of stuff. And we're seeing the same thing today.
Well, that has been a topic, certainly on some of the Sunday news shows. Is it a Cold War? It kind of looks like a Cold War. One move we saw that didn't get a lot of attention was the Defense Department announced an agreement with the Philippines to put, I believe it was 9, you might call micro bases there. Philippine government didn't want to have a big base that had been like the one that had been at Subic Bay from World War II and for many years. But the U.S. is kind of positioning forward equipment, resources, I guess, some military members. How important a move is that the Defense Department announced last week?
Yeah, that's extremely important because the area it's a big ocean, and the more strategic and tactical bases that we can have out there, the better off we are. We don't want to have to everybody's read everything about Guadalcanal. We don't want to fight our way back in there if we have to. So if we have people out there, personnel out there now, that can, can react as necessary, it's extremely important. So it's a great move by the State Department and Department of Defense.
My colleague Jack McGurk was just pointing out that the North Koreans fired a number of missiles again in a test. They're flying very high, hundreds of miles high. They're not going very far out. One of them landed in the territorial waters of Japan, and the Japanese were very upset about it. What could be done about the North Koreans launching these missile tests? One day they're going to hit something. They're going to hit land. They're going to do damage with one of these missile launches.
Ken, that's I know the last probably 4 presidents have had that, that major concern. How do we stop them? And I don't want to say we just don't have the ability to stop them, but they're not going to listen to us. I think they don't listen to the Chinese or the Russians say, hey, stop doing this. They're going to continue to do that. And like you said, something's going to happen. It's going to malfunction and land somewhere, and it could create an incident. But I don't think there's anybody on the face of the earth right now that can stop him from doing those type of actions.
I give my colleague Jack McGurk a chance to ask you a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask Admiral about the recovery of the Chinese spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina. They said it was in, I think it was 50 feet of water, Ken?
Yeah, fairly shallow.
Yeah.
Right, shallow water, yeah.
So, yeah, what does that recovery entail? Is that an issue with that depth of water?
No, that's from my experience of, recovering objects in the past. We have the right people out there, the EOD people. We've got, got divers, and we got the ships and capability that can go out there. We send an amphib out there with LCACs and landing craft, and they can operate on there. So the problem is, like anything, is finding out exactly where it is. But once we find out where it is, it's pretty easy to recover.
Very good. And one thing we noticed that the South African Navy recently participated, I don't know if they hosted, naval exercises with apparently the Chinese and Russian ships, and kind of doing something like the United States Navy's been doing with RIMPAC or other exercises with its NATO partners and other partners in the Pacific. Is that a significant move that South Africa seems to be aligning or may align with China and Russia?
Absolutely. As we go through the events in Ukraine, and we're trying to to get people to put pressure on Russia, and everything that's going on with there, and then we have what we thought was a semi-ally, and of course great heritage with the British is now cozying up to the Chinese and the Russians. So that's something that we want to take an eye out on. Whether they're trying to establish a base in that part of the world. I know that both China has got one big base in Djibouti now, and that was one of the questions that Admiral Dew asked me when I was out there doing the piracy thing. He says, how do you all handle logistics? And we talked about we have a base in Djibouti. So you see the Chinese and the Russians trying to hit in strategic locations throughout the world, and especially in Africa.
Absolutely. And another report Jack had earlier on our show was that the Russian Navy apparently fired 4 missiles at Ukraine, and the Ukraine defense knocked down 2 of them. How difficult is that to knock down a missile the Russians may fire from a ship or land-based at Ukraine? They've been doing devastating damage to both civilian and power station infrastructure targets. How difficult is it to knock down missiles, as the Ukraine's apparently knocked down 2 over the weekend?
Right. Well, so the issue is, and President Zelensky is saying, we need the capability to do this. So if our NATO allies, people give them the radars and give them the counter battery to shoot these things down, it's not too hard, because some of these older Soviet missiles are not the most sophisticated thing. We're not talking about hypersonic missiles. So if we give the Ukrainians the capability to shoot down these missiles, they're going to have a pretty good success rate.
Absolutely. And I just want to ask you a little bit about Navy shipbuilding. We've been on, if they mentioned the Philippine Sea, and working in recovery of the Chinese balloon remains, and how to replace some of the ships. And we're going to be at the commissioning of the USS Cooperstown, a littoral combat ship, on May 6th in New York. What are some of the priorities for the surface fleet of the Navy?
Well, we need ships that are more capable, and the thing it's not good right now is we're kind of decommissioning ships that have they're getting old. The cruisers are getting old, but we got to get ships out there. I mean, we're trying to increase our capability with the Flight 3 DDGs, which have the Spy 6 radar, are going to be fantastic, but they're not getting out fast enough. Chinese are building ships, 3 times as fast as we are. So we numbers is going to count if you get into a conflict. But what we need is more shipbuilding and getting out there faster.
Hey, just so that we have about 20 seconds left, tell us a little bit about the Navy League. I know they got a big conference coming up in Washington, I believe in April.
Right, that's correct. They have it every year, and it's a great conference. I know, Ken, you've been down there. It's a great display of some of our capabilities, and our contractors all get together, and it's a great conference every year. I strongly recommend all our people that want to get out there and see what our Navy's doing and hear some great speakers. The CNO will be there, the Secretary will be there, and some other great speakers. So if you can make it down to the Gaylord Conference Center right outside of Washington the first week of April, I'm sure you'll be very surprised on what we're doing.
Now, looking forward to that. So I appreciate your calling in today on the holiday. Rear Admiral Terrence McKnight, 31-year veteran of the U.S. Navy and author of Pirate Alley, about the fight against the Somali pirates. Admiral, thank you, and thank you for your service.
Okay, it's always a pleasure, Ken, and thank you for what you do for all our service members.
Our pleasure. Good to see you. Good to talk today.
Okay, stay well, my friend.
You too.
You've been listening to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX M1460 and around the world on WVOX.com.
WVOX.
We thank today's special guest, Rear Admiral Terry McKnight of the U.S. Navy. Remember to check out our Facebook pages, the CaMMVets media page, our Sea Sources page, our Iona Basketball Report page, and our West Point Football Report page. And until next week, remember to thank a veteran.